1995, our speaker served as a chaplain to public safety agencies with Fremont Fire Department while a priest at St. Joseph Catholic Mission of San Jose. Is that correct, Father? Then in 1999, while at St. Columba, he began to serve the Oakland Fire Department, then to Oakland Police Department as their chaplain, and served there for 13 years. So I got it right. I researched it. And comments that, he's inspiration to time of crisis. And so who better be able to talk about moments with Christ and speaking like Christ than Father Jayson Landeza.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to check the lighting thing, see if we can go ahead and see if we can't enable folks to read a little bit better. I'm not sure how the lighting works. Oh, wow, that works. Let's see. Hey.
No sleeping.
Well, you can sleep all you want. It's no snoring is what the, after a wonderful meal, you gotta tell me.
This way, somewhere.
How's that? Is that a little better? Yeah. Probably it's my eyesight that can't see very well. So, well, first of all, my Auntie Faye, for quite a number of months, has been inviting me to come join you folks, and for whatever reason, because I've been through a number of transitions, I've been able to do that a little bit. Can you read that okay? No, I didn't think so.
Born and raised in Working.
Oh, I feel like I'm showing you guys an eye chart. Let's see. A little fuzzy, isn't it?
I could read it for you.
Yeah, it's clear.
That's clear.
It's clear. I have 4 eyes, that's why.
Well, that's good. There?
A little bit earlier.
Boy, you folks have way better eyesight than I do. I think that's blurry, isn't it? So, well, I'll just read it anyway. So I was born and raised in Berkeley. My parents were born and raised in the islands in Hawaii. My father is ethnically Filipino. His father and his grandparents are from the Philippines. My mother is Chinese, Hawaiian, and Irish of ethnicity. I was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Oakland at the Cathedral in 1987. I've been assigned to a variety of different parishes throughout the diocese, beginning with St. Leander San Leandro, St. Joseph's Mission San Jose in Fremont, St. John Vianney, Walnut Creek. I was the pastor of St. Columba Church in Oakland, which is the diocese's largest African-American parish. I was pastor there for 10 years. During the middle of that period of time, there was a crisis at St. Joseph's the Worker in Berkeley. So I took over that parish for about 2 years, as well as running St. Columba in Oakland. Went on a year sabbatical that took me all over the world, particularly to the Vatican, and then was assigned to St. Leander San Leandro as the associate, and St. Joan of Arc as recently as about a few weeks ago as their associate. Bishop Barber appointed me as the full-time chaplain for law enforcement agencies throughout Alameda County, specifically for the Oakland Police Department. I had been doing that for part-time for quite a number of years, and am now doing that full-time and living at St. Leander San Leandro. My biggest claim to fame is the fact that Faye Quinto is my brother's mother-in-law. That's the proudest part of my life at this very point, is Faye Quinto, my association with Faye Quinto. This is what Pope Benedict said about what faith is. Now, what I want to talk to you tonight about is the personal experience of Jesus and being able to share that experience as a way in which to connect with and take seriously the faith that we embrace. I'm going to talk a little bit about a particular author named Sharon Waddell, who came and spoke with us at the diocese some months ago, and some ways in which we continually have to touch upon our daily experiences, to connect with the person of Jesus in each of our daily lives and each of our everyday experiences and the people whose lives we interact. And those kinds of experiences are more common than you'd believe. And you'd be surprised where you find them. And you know when you do. But what I'm going to do tonight is give you a hand about trying to look at your day and see where you interacted with Christ. So Pope Benedict XVI, he had a general audience at St. Peter's Square and said this on October 21st, 2009. Faith is above all a personal, intimate encounter with Jesus and to experience his closeness, his friendship, his love. And only in this way does one learn to know him evermore and to love and follow him evermore. May this happen to each and every one of us. And I'd say, may it happen to each and every one of us a lot. And it happens more often than you think. Sherry Waddell is an author. She worked with the Archdiocese of Seattle. Bishop Barber had her come out here some months ago to speak to all the priests of the diocese in one evening at St. Mary's Cathedral, St. Mary's Parish in Walnut Creek, and for an entire day with the catechists, the religious educators, and the youth ministers of the diocese. And that's the session that I attended when she came here. What she's finding is that in so many ways, we as Catholics are Catholics. But I'll try to show some people. I know people are having a difficult time seeing this, but the intent is, in her work, is that in order for us to continue to build the kingdom of God, we've got to not only get a sense of what our experience of Christ is, but perhaps even more importantly, to share that experience of Christ, the personal witness of Christ touching your heart and your life, and being able to hear others speak about that same experience, that you're not the only ones who have that kind of experience. And yet that's a language that we as Catholics are not accustomed to speaking on not only on a shared level, but even on a more open level. These are figures that come from her book, and I think they're worth looking at because it bespeaks of the kinds of ways in which we as Catholics struggle with what it means to share our own faith. That only 30% of Americans who are raised Catholics are still practicing. They say the largest percentage of religious connected people in the country, this was a Pew Gallup survey done, were ex-Catholics. Ex-Catholics outnumber Catholics in the United States. But the majority of adult Catholics are not even certain that a personal relationship with God is possible. Because somehow we are so accustomed to being very cultural about the practice of our Catholicism and are unable to speak of and share that personal experience of how God has touched our lives and all the many ways in which God has walked with us each and every day. So transmitting the faith means to create in every place and time the conditions for the personal encounter of individuals with Jesus Christ. How do we interact and touch upon that experience, that person? At the faith encounter with the person of Jesus Christ in relationship with him, remembering him in the Eucharist, and through the grace of the Spirit, having us in the mind of Christ. So not only getting a sense of what Christ is for us in our own lives, but getting a sense of what getting into our own mind what it is that Christ wants for us. So she uses this word intentional discipleship, as opposed to cultural discipleship, which is sort of like, well, we're going to do it because my mom did it, my grandparents did it. We do it because that's the way my people did it. Intentional discipleship means that there's a conscious decision upon each and every one of us to say, I'm in this not because my parents did this and my grandparents did this. I'm in it because I intentionally say yes to Christ in my own life, because I experience him, I know him, I see him, he's in my heart, he's in my life, he's in my experience. That's the intentionality with which she uses the word intentional discipleship. So the intentional discipleship is not accidental or merely cultural. It's not a matter of just following the rules. A disciple's primary motivation comes from within, out of a Holy Spirit given a hunger and thirst for righteousness. That all things serve and from all the central thing, the worship and love of the Blessed Trinity with one's whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and therefore the love of neighbor as well. Evangelization isn't about us. It's about Jesus. It's about making him known. It's about making his experience in your life known and shared. It means seeking out those lost sheep through us. And in any of our parishes, you know what it's like. You know people who just go to Mass for the sake of, well, they're there, but they're not engaged in their faith. they're there at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're looking at their watch because I see them. I'm preaching. I'm looking at them, look at their watch. I know they got a tea time coming up. I know they got something coming up. And I know they're just doing it because they're just going through the motions. You know, we all know folks like that. We're not putting them down, but it's just sense that somehow faith has got to be something deeper. We're just talking at the table about how she was looking for a place. You could be involved in all kinds of ministries in the parish, but sometimes there's got to be a point where some people are looking for something deeper, and being able to share the path and journey of faith and how Christ has walked with you in your life. Sometimes we're uncomfortable as Catholics to share that, and when we meet a group of folks like in a Cursillo setting who are more than able and willing to want to share that, then there's this connection, there's this fellowship, there's this friendship, there's this joy, there's this trust, and all you that we talked about, that's part of your own faith experience that has now been deepened. So this is what she's talking about, that if you can light this fire through a parish, let alone through like a Cursillo movement, because all of us who've been through Cursillos have walked out of there transformed. It's keeping that fire going. It's being able to connect with other people who have that shared faith that's going to sustain that faith in our own Christian journey as we travel along in this path. We as Catholics have this don't ask, don't tell attitude about our faith, right? I mean, sometimes, and that's what Sherry Waddell talks about. It's like this sort of sense that, you know, we won't ask you about whether you encountered God today, and we really don't want to have you share with us that, because that's maybe just too personal, and I've got a golf date I got to go to. I ain't got time to listen. So you know that in many of our parishes, that can end up being the normative for faith sharing. There isn't any. So you don't ask, geez, how did you encounter Christ today? What was it about today that made a difference for you? Where was God with you today? So sometimes in our own Catholic journey, we have don't ask, don't tell. Sometimes we are invited in a particular way, our faith tells us to ask, and then maybe we'll tell you where we saw Christ. Sherry Waddell talks about this spiral of silence, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that it's essential for us to grasp that the cultural pressure, both inside and outside the average American parish, is often against the overt expression of discipleship. Now, what we do here at Cursillo, at our leaders, is that sometimes it runs counter to what our faith, it runs counter to what we're accustomed to doing, sharing some of those deepest parts of our own lives. Because we're afraid people might think, man, this person's like really in the religious thing or whatever. We risk the judgment that people can often throw at us, when in fact we're sharing what the person of Christ and what God has done for us in our life. There's two overlapping cultural norms that are a part of all this. Is one secular and the other ecclesial. It's intimidating for men and women to seek imitating men and women who seek to live as Christ, disciples of Jesus Christ. In order to counter that pressure to live loud as the intention of Catholics were called to be, we absolutely need strong interpersonal communal support. Which is what you're doing here. Which is what this is all about. You're relying on each other for that faith and that support to sustain you to go against a pressure within the church and perhaps beyond that says we don't share things as deep as it is as faith to us. So this is exactly what we're doing here as we go ahead and get a sense of sharing our faith in the context of the Filipino community, Cursillo, and the diocese. That we need the strong interpersonal communal support that this group provides as well. Where do you find Christ? Where do you find Christ? Just say it out loud. Where do you find Christ?
Here.
You know, but there's the funny thing too, that one of the things that sustained me at St. Columba. St. Columba is at the corner of Alcatraz and San Pablo in North Oakland. And Alcatraz and San Pablo is perhaps one of the most heavily let's put it this way. Whenever I would open the church in the morning, particularly on Sunday mornings, I would have to clear the steps and the surrounding areas of used condoms, of waste matter, all kind of needles. We would have in our rectory a mug full of bullet casings. at the corner of Alcatraz and San Pablo is one of the most heavily prostituted areas in the city of Oakland. Drug deals and all, at least once a year someone would be shot and killed in front of the church. Not just shot, I mean people get shot maybe once a month around the church, shot and killed once a year in front of the church. So it was not unusual in the context of the work I did in the inner city of Oakland to encounter all kinds of characters. And you know, in encountering some of those characters, I found Christ. I would see Christ. And I would be humbled and surprised where I would find Christ. So when you've got a reading like we do from Matthew 25, which says to us, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, you can see, they have prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me." So we find Christ in all kinds of different settings in the context of our own lives, but we find Christ in a particular way in the kinds of people that I encountered at St. Columba. When I arrived at St. Leander 2 weeks ago, I was informed by Father Paul Vassar, who's the pastor, that they have a program, not really a program, but every Monday night, the church is kept open all night long for homeless people. I'm like, man, wow, that's... So, I mean, tonight, I mean, just going by, I mean, my auntie face says, "Oh yeah, your brother's going to be playing basketball across the street." And it's going to be ironic that as he plays basketball, the church will start filling up with homeless people who don't have a place to stay. So, and that's the sense of this parish's desire, to seek Christ, even the folks who have no place to call home. Think about where you saw Christ these past few days. Think about it in your own life. Maybe just think for a little bit about where you encountered Christ. Sometimes you're surprised because you know doggone well Christ put somebody in your own life and it makes you shake your head and say, "Man, I would not have expected Christ to be there." On the left-hand side, anyone, any idea where that's at?
Bingo.
Bingo? No, there's not bingo here. Maybe where that is?
The church.
No, well, Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, Hayward. Anyone been there? Holy Sepulchre Cemetery? That's the mausoleum. The mausoleum. Been there. So I had a generally do a lot of services there, and so the mortuary, the Holy Angels and Holy Sepulchre called me to go ahead and work with a 92-year-old man who had lost his 90-year-old wife. They'd been married for about 64 years. And like I said, I've been a priest for 27 years. I've done a few hundred funerals, maybe more than that. So I went to this fellow's house. He lived in South Hayward. And I think the moment I walked in the door, I knew something was different. He was in his wheelchair. It was a very simple home, very, very simple home. Remember, I spent the last year in San Ramon and Danville. So, you know, I walked in this house and he said, "Come please sit in my chair." Now I know his chair, I knew it was his favorite chair because he'd been in that chair. I mean, he'd been in that chair, let's put it that way, okay? And so, I'm like, he wants me to sit here and I really don't want to sit there because I can see what's kind of been there. And not being respectful, right? But I just knew that this is like, whoa, this is going to be okay, fine. And you know, and of course his chair was wet, which was like, you know, so. But he talked about a love he had for his wife. That, you know, I just sat in his wheelchair and he was hard of hearing, but here he was torn apart about having loved this woman for 64 years, and the pain, the deep visceral pain that caused him. The joy that he talked about when he talked about his wife and how they first met and how he was being shipped off to the Pacific Theater in the Second World War. Talked about how they got married after the war and how they bought their home and raised their family. And then he talked about having lost 2 of his children, his only 2 children in the world. And one died of cancer at 10 years old. The other died of AIDS some years later. And he talks about losing his wife. And then you hear him talk about, "I'm the only one left. I'm all alone." And you sit there thinking, man, this is Christ. I mean, you sit there thinking, this is the encounter of Christ. This is the encounter of Christ. This is the things you sit there and say, now you don't know what it is. And it comes on you surprisingly. All of us have those experiences, that you know you're sitting in the presence of something sacred right at that very moment. And it's about his fragility, his aloneness, that this is the person of Christ in our midst. So you couldn't help but think that.